Hi everyone, I'm Kana and I just finished week 2 of Code Platoon Software Bootcamp. There are 13 weeks to go, but I figured I'd give you an update now to get a feel for what I've learned so far and how I'm feeling. So I would like to discuss what I learned this week, as well as cover a special topic of the TAs at Code Platoon. So first of all, what I learned this week was mostly object-oriented programming and how to read and write into a CSV file. So the best way for me to describe object-oriented programming is to ask you to think about your closet. And how do you organize your closet versus how someone else organizes their closet? Like, do you organize yours by color, or do you organize it by weather type, like hot weather, cold weather? Or do you organize it by occasion, like dressy versus casual? So in the same way, code has to be organized and to create a program, and how you organize it depends on your needs and the needs of the application you're working on and your preferences. So the way we learned this week was object-oriented programming. There's several different other kinds of ways to organize your code. The other way we discussed was functional programming, but we just basically touched on it and touched on how it's different from OOP and maybe what some of the advantages and disadvantages of either way of organization or either way you organize are. So that's object-oriented programming. And with the CSV files, it's essentially a small local database. CSV stands for comma separated value, and it's just a way to keep information. Now, they said we'll be using databases in the future, but this is just a first step. And so I think the best way for me to really communicate to you what I learned this week is to tell you what I could do at the beginning of the week versus what I can do at the end of the week. So before week 2 started, I could write a basic program, maybe 1 to 5 steps long, in a single file. And this would be comparable to the challenges that you have to do for Code Platoon's application or Code Wars. Like if you go into codewars.com and solve a few of those problems, I feel like that was my capability at the beginning of the week. Now, by the end of week 2, I can now write more complex programs that require maybe multiple files within a file system that have multiple classes. And you're not just running things one time. One example is that on Friday, we had an assignment to write a program to score a bowling game. And that requires being able to score, but also being able to take in the fact that spares and strikes count differently. Like you have to look at extra frames for those particular scenarios. And you have to be able to account for multiple players. So it is now a program versus just solving a simple problem. And that segues a little into my tip of the week. My tip of the week is to use outside resources. As great as Code Platoon is at supporting us and having relevant information, there's always more information out there. And sometimes the information that's out there is easier for you to understand, like your particular learning style or your way of understanding things. So in my case, I had a really hard time understanding how to use the CSV files. And even though we went over it in lecture and we had a few examples, I was still having a hard time actually putting it into practice. So I went out on YouTube and found a few more videos to watch, and it helped clear things up for me. And this is good practice because as a developer, you're going to constantly have to be learning and constantly be looking for resources anyways. One of the resources my classmates used is Coursera. She was having a hard time understanding OOP, so she took one of their mini courses to learn a little bit more about OOP, that's the object-oriented programming we were discussing, and inheritance, which is a part of OOP. So that's the tip for the week, and that sort of segues a little into the last topic I would like to discuss, the special topic, which is TAs. Now, this is very Code Platoon specific, but we have 2 different types of TAs in Code Platoon. We have intern TAs and volunteer TAs. Now, we have 4 intern TAs, and these are essentially people that have either recently completed boot camp or are currently working on a CS degree. And they're a little advanced of where the majority of the classes. So they take the class with us and they can help answer questions as we have them or help us figure out some of the problems that we have. And they're there throughout our class time to help us out. We also have volunteer TAs, and they are there from 5:30 to 7:30 Chicago time, and they are mid to senior level developers actually practicing in the field. So it's very helpful to ask them not just technical questions, but you can ask them questions about the industry. So it essentially becomes a mini mentoring session that you can volunteer for at any day, Monday through Thursday, that you decide you want to have a little extra mentoring. So that is a very beneficial thing that I did not realize we would have, is to have access to all these industry professionals. That's all I have for today. I hope it was helpful. And if you have any questions, again, you can leave it down in the comments, and I will see you next week.